Welcome to NAGLREP Success, a podcast series featuring the talents of LGBT real estate agents and allies who inspire the LGBT community. I'm your host, David Cerroti. Today, we're talking marketing with serial entrepreneur, noted author of the new Road to Recognition. He's a speaker and a leader at Placester, which is having an unbelievable impact on the real estate industry. Let's welcome from Placester, their VP, Seth Price. Hey, Seth, how you doing?
David, thanks so much for having me. I am thrilled to be here, and I'm doing really well. Thank you.
What is the Road to Recognition about?
We live in this really challenging time where we're dealing with an attention deficit of customers, prospects, even in our own families. Like you think about, sitting at the table, and unless you ban the phones at the table, getting someone's undivided attention is basically a miracle today. And so the Road to Recognition is, one, an acknowledgement of that, but also that each participant in a business sense has the power to generate their own course, to be recognized for their expertise, to accelerate their career, and to drive sales for their business. And it's not only the individual contributors, but it's also the managers in an organization, the leadership in an organization. And when done intentionally, you can multiply your success like no other activity that exists in the marketing space, because it's really a framework in the way that you think.
Well, you've been working at Placester for a while now, the third employee hired. What is Placester?
So we are a business platform for real estate professionals. And what that means is when you are in this business, and I was a realtor for 5 years, and sort of, I don't want to say pre-internet, but pre-easy accessibility to internet and websites and all those things. When you're in the business, you're best served when you're talking to people, right? You're best served when you're building relationship. And yet we need all these tools to make sure that we can stay in touch with folks, that if 90% of the buyer's journey happens online, we need a presence online. We need to make sure that we understand their customer sentiment, like once they do a transaction with us, did they enjoy it? So we build a whole bunch of tools that allow the agent and broker to be more effective online. And that starts with an IDX website, email marketing, marketing automation, Facebook marketing, all, those types of advertising activities. We have a company called Real Satisfied, which is a company we acquired a year ago, and that's customer sentiment. So every time there's a sale and it gets noted in the MLS, a survey is sent out to both the buyer and seller to ask them what was the experience like. And so we put all those tools together in one tool set and make them easily accessible to agents, brokers, and brands.
Now, you notice my first two questions, book and Placester, both almost startups, both almost your own babies. How in the world do you do both?
Well, I think someone asked me this the other day. They asked me about, so we create a lot of content at Placester. And what content means to us is everything from, white papers to webinars to podcasts to blog posts, infographics, SlideShare, and conferences. And the reason we do that is because of the first thing that I said, is when you're dealing with any consumer and you're in business, getting someone's attention and showing them that you care and are providing some value, you need to front load that, because most people are impatient. Like if you think about your own day to day, we don't have time to be sold to. Now, you can still catch people off guard and like cold call and interrupt people and still, have some conversion percentage. But for the most part, we live in an era where relationships are so incredibly valuable that the creating of the content allows us to stand out above the crowd and allows us to connect in ways that we wouldn't normally connect. And so the book is an extension of that. It's a labor of love that, I wrote on nights and weekends and, I wrote with the blessing of the CEO of my company and other folks in our organization and the support of my wife. But I did it because, one, I am on a mission in my mind, which is I know so many super talented people in all levels of business that often have a challenge getting attention for their ideas and driving sales to their business. And that's something that I've done over and over and over again. With 12 businesses, 4 of them, multi-million-dollar profitability, scaling from 0 to 400,000 customers that pay to be a part of a company. Like, I know what that pain is like, sleeping on the floor, cold calling, doing the marketing, wearing all the hats. And so I felt like I needed to share that with folks so I could help empower them, even if they didn't want to buy a website or didn't need Facebook marketing right now.
So you call yourself a serial entrepreneur. It really started at 13 years old.
Yes. It may have even started before that. I was, I don't want to say I was poor, but we didn't have much money. I think we were rich in love, but we didn't have a lot of things. So most of my early childhood, all of my clothes were hand-me-downs. We cooked everything. Like, going out to a dinner was like that. Someone either had to die or get married for that to happen. And, I was driven to want to do something bigger than what my life was. And I was surrounded by these amazing women in my family, the matriarchs, who half of my family is African American and half is white. And the women on both sides of my family were doers. And they were doers in a time when women didn't have the support, when women weren't acknowledged as leaders. And yet, if you look at the history of my family, they led our family. Like, they were the ones that always had businesses. They helped do the finances. They had food on the table. Like, they took care of us. And that was my role model. And it inspired me at a very, very young age to do my absolute best and not take no for an answer.
And we're talking to a world-class marketer, but the story really begins in the restaurant world, doesn't it?
Yeah, and partially, yes. I mean, I'd say my most, notable early success was I was 24 years old, living in New York City, and I had this great catering company, and we're doing fantastic stuff for the Museum of Modern Art and the Met and what have you. And I wanted to open a restaurant, and I ended up opening this restaurant, which is called Bubby's in Tribeca. And at the time, Tribeca wasn't what it is today, but we were able to create one of the most popular and profitable restaurants in that area, which is still in existence today, 25 years later. It was a great learning experience on how to get attention in a super crowded market, how to negotiate in a way that, when you're trying to get a lease in a very competitive city, how to get PR, how to attract talent, and then how to get the press to show up and write about you in all the major publications, from, the New York Times to the Daily Post, the New Yorker, Time Out. Every publication in New York had us on their list of the top places to go in New York City.
How did you do that?
Well, we haven't met personally, but I'm tireless, but I'm also very focused. Some might say I'm a bit of a workaholic, but I feel like if you're always put on the shoes of the person that you're talking to and figure out what's going to be advantageous for them, you can almost always find a way to go in the direction that you'd like to go. And so, we'll use the press as a perfect example. I made friends with the press. It was pretty straightforward. I didn't ask for anything until I got to know who they were. I communicated with them like human beings. I sent them gifts. So one of the things we were, I'd say, prized for at the restaurant is we made these amazing desserts. And so I would, I'd send them gifts when they weren't expecting a gift, and I didn't ask for anything. And then that piques someone's curiosity. That's like relationship building 101. If you think of, Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, there's nothing more important to an individual than the sound of their own name. And so just like, knowing that and really trying to figure out, like, how do I find out what's important to them, and then how do I help them in their careers and in their lives? Like, who doesn't want to help you after that? I see that still works today.
What was your favorite dessert that you made?
We made a mile-high lemon meringue pie that is still one of my favorite desserts to this day. And so it's like old school, a classic French meringue that's caramelized, and the custard is more of a lemon custard than a super sweet custard, and the crust is the most important thing. So we use a combination of butter and shortening, which gives you this perfect flake, and you've got to cook it weighted down after you poke holes in it. So it gets fluffy and crispy, but it also keeps its structure, so it holds the pie together.
Now, you'll be speaking at the NAGLREP conference, so if we can get you access to the kitchen, how do you?
I can whip up something. I don't know if I can whip up a lemon meringue pie. That takes some preparation. But if you get me access to a kitchen and some decent produce or some goods there, I can whip up a great meal.
We're going to talk more marketing with Seth, but first let's talk about the 4th annual NAGLREP National LGBT Real Estate Conference. It'll be in one of America's favorite resorts, Palm Springs, on October 17th through the 19th. The conference will be a star-studded affair. It will include Seth, Bravo's Madison Hildebrand. He's going to share his journey on $1 Million Listing and beyond. And, of course, LGBT icon Cleve Jones will speak about his incredible book, When We Rise, which inspired the ABC TV miniseries. We'll be entertained by the hilarious Alec Mappa, and, of course, we will learn together from an amazing lineup of other great speakers. You can get more information at naglrep.com. Seth, what are you going to be talking about besides now the art of cooking?
I do use food analogies often because I consider myself like a chef in the world of, helping folks find their voice with their brand. And my talk is really about how you do that in this modern age, given all of the hats that you still have to wear when growing a business or accelerating your career. There's a brand that already exists, whether you like it or not. And that brand is the conversations that are had when you're not in the room, or the remembrance that someone has after you hand them the business card or they do work with you. That's your brand. That's your reputation. And then there are some very clear-cut ways that you can decide how to focus that brand so it's really representing you in a way that you can be proud of and that serves you as a human being. But then it also has a way to accelerate your business, because once people understand who you are and the value that you add to the world, you start to become a magnet. And that's what great branding is all about, and that's what great personal branding is all about, is we are attracted to those that are very clear in what they stand for. And even if some of that sort of definition is at the exclusion of other things. And I think that that's really a positive thing, and why I think it's so important in this community is that, well, you don't always have to self-identify, but sometimes self-identifying and saying, hey, this is my community. Like, if you think about us as human beings, that's what we have. We have our friendships, we have our communities that we belong to, and our causes that we care about. Like, that's what makes life worth living more than anything else. And so making sure that you can meld who you are as a human into your business life is only going to create this exponential ability for you to grow, because you're going to attract the right people that support who you are. You're going to be able to telegraph value to people that care about the causes that you telegraph. And even when you're working with people that aren't 100% in line, you're not hiding. And that just feels better, and you perform better when you're in that state. where you're centered in who you are and you're clear about what you're adding to the world. So that's what my talk is about, and I'm really excited to be asked to do that, and this is a great opportunity.
Now, all of these learnings come from starting, running, and succeeding at 12 different companies, and I'm sure there were threads that kind of showed themselves all the way through this journey that you've been on.
Yeah, I mean, you focus on the success, but I think, part of our growth and how we learn is by failing often. We're often things that we want to do don't come to fruition, but the thing that you learn when you really are focused on trying to build something that you think is great is you learn how to pick yourself up, because your feelings get hurt, you get yourself attached to certain successes, and then they don't happen the way that you want them to happen. But the sooner you can pick yourself up to get back on and to learn from the activities that you've already done, the quicker you can improve and be what I call this, self-learning entity, an autodidact that consumes all the information and the inputs from around them and then makes choices to forward the goals that they have. And that's, to me, been the crux of my success and the success I've been able to help others achieve is really just, hey, failure's it's just another way of saying, hey, it didn't work out, but that's okay. Now let's get up. How can we do it better? How can we improve on what we learned? And maybe that might include, hey, a slight pivot. Maybe what we were focused on was not the right thing at that time. So that's been a huge part of my journey, is acknowledging things that don't always go right and turning them into things that point in the right direction.
You said you started, or I guess you didn't start because at just a young age you had different jobs, but being a real estate agent early on showed you the challenges and the difficulties of this business.
Yeah, I mean, what's great about this industry is that the barrier to entry is really low. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, I think the downside of that is, hey, there are some folks that don't have the domain expertise that we would all want them to have. And that's why organizations are really important in having an educational focus and, criteria for entry and criteria for certification. But the great part is it's the American dream, right? You can decide to be a realtor, and you can, by applying effort consistently, you can grow an amazing business just by sheer will and man or human hours into the activity that you're doing. And that's what I saw in real estate. And I got into it because, truth be told, I had an investment and I wanted to do a 1031 exchange. So if you're listening to this in the U.S., that's a sort of a tax framework that allows you to take an investment that is you're not paying sales tax on or income tax on, and then transfer it to another investment. And I wanted to do that with a purchase of a multifamily building. And the person that I got on phone duty, who answered the phone when I called this brokerage, I think she lied to me, but I'm not going to mention her name. She didn't know what she was talking about. And I was so frustrated because I ended up spending a good 4 or 5 hours with her, like looking at properties and asking her lots of questions. And it dawned on me one day that I knew more about 1031 tax exchange and investment properties than she did. And she didn't seem to care enough to do the research in between our meetings. And so that prompted me to get my license. And it turned into a fantastic run. I had a great broker, Sally Lapides, who has a brokerage in Providence called Residential Properties. She was very generous. She was open to me applying my marketing know-how to, I created a website for every listing that I had. I had this amazing website. I did email marketing and a marketing newsletter. She put me in touch with their head of technology, Tom Flanagan, who's gone on to do amazing stuff for lots of different larger brands. But we just hit it off, and I was able to grow my business because, it's like any other thing. If you apply these very straightforward business and marketing strategies to them, you can make them grow a lot quicker than just waiting for the phone to ring.
Well, one of the challenges a real estate agent obviously has is you've got so many years between a sale or a transaction. You believe today's society is allowing us more touch points than we've ever had before.
Yeah, that's a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing for those who acknowledge it and set up ways to stay in touch with folks. If you think about every human being that let's just apply it to real estate. For the most part, they only need you at that one moment when they're ready to sell or buy a house, and the rest of their life, how do you create value for them? And I think that's the more important question, because once you figure out your domain expertise, how can I help someone best list their house and represent it and get the highest and best, or how can I help someone find the home or the investment of their dreams? That's your expertise. Now, the other part is, how do you create value when they're not looking to buy or sell? And that is really what the opportunity is today. And that's why personal branding is so important, because without being able to stand out and be recognized and be memorable, we're just a commodity. We're 2 clicks away from obscurity. We're just like everybody else. And if you want to grow in business, you can't just be like everybody else. You need referrals. You need repeat business. You need people to know you before they walk in the door. So they want to shake your hand. They don't need you to explain the value that they add. They've already consumed that value on the web.
What are some of the tips that you suggest agents do to stay relevant today?
Well, I'd say that if you're not creating content, and what I mean by content is some of the things that I said earlier, ways in which people can consume your subject matter expertise when you're not around. If you're not creating that, no one knows who you are and what you bring to the table until they meet you in person. And in business, you can't rely on your business growing by the number of people that you meet in person. You just can't. There's just not enough people for the numbers to work. And so you need to be able to create content that is either educational, entertaining, or a combination of both for folks that your audience can consume when you're not there and when they don't need you. And that can take all kinds of forms. It can take, if you're writing emails today and you wouldn't read them yourself and no one responds to them, you're probably missing a huge opportunity, because you really want to be a friend in the inbox. Imagine if you wrote those emails like you cared and like you were writing them to a dear friend. That would elicit a very different response than the newsletter that you might send out today. Or even if you look at your website, it's a huge opportunity. Even though we can say Zillow is the biggest destination for real estate search, hey, consumers are searching on 20 and 30 sites before they make a decision. And when they're choosing an agent, when they get to your site, is it just hey, I'm the best agent, or are you actually providing value that is written in human form, written to someone that you care about, that serves them? And that's the low-hanging fruit that I think almost everyone listening could really benefit from, is look at your site as if you were a consumer. What's there for you?
You also talk about this idea of blogging and sharing information, and don't get frustrated if you write, say, 14 blog posts and nobody pays attention. What did you mean by that?
Yeah. Well, so it's a strategy. And strategies, you don't build anything great immediately. And so I'll give you an example of when we started at Placester. I was the number 3 hire. We didn't quite have a product yet, so we didn't have something to sell to folks, but we knew we were building the product and it was coming out soon. And what I knew I wanted to do was to be able to showcase value to agents and brokers before we had a product. And so I spent almost 7 or 8 weeks writing 60 blog posts, all about my experience being a realtor and what I wish that I had learned. So the first thing that I wrote was an beginner's guide to being a real estate agent. And if you Google that today, it's still the #1 search result because I wrote that in about 20 posts, and it was everything that I wish that someone had taught me besides just the certification of getting my license. And that's the lens in which you need to look at your content. It's not just, hey, I need to write 3 blog posts today. You need to write blog posts that serves an individual. It serves your customers. And I like to write as if I'm serving one person. If I can change the life of one person and help them solve a problem that I know they're dealing with that blog post, I have succeeded, because that one blog post has helped me convert that person into a sale, has helped me change their life, and help them remember who I am and the value that I bring to the table. So that's where
What if I
blogging
can't
is
write?
super valuable. Then you can dictate, right? You can talk into your iPhone and say all your ideas and go on Odesk or Fiverr and have someone transcribe that. Go to rev.com, transcribe your recording, and then have someone clean it up and turn it into a blog post. Or you can go to any one of the schools around you and go to the English department or the journalism department and say, hey, I'm looking to hire someone. I bet you could get a really talented, eager person to write your articles for $50 an article.
Are you a blog guy or are you a video guy? Or is it a healthy mix between both?
I'd say both. I am do the activity that is going to serve the audience. And so I think you need to be somewhat flexible, but I do a lot of blogging, so I write a lot. I do a lot of guest posting, meaning that I write blogs on other publications, whether that be Entrepreneur or Inman or Realtor.com. Like, I will share my ideas on those publications. And I also create a lot of video. So I do video, but I also do Facebook Live. I find that if it's serving the business and the brand and the reputation, then I'm interested.
I want to pause for a second moment and this time talk about NAGLREP. We talked before about the conference where more than 700 are expected to attend. It'll be the largest LGBT and allies event in real estate history, and it is a big part of the NAGLREP offering. And during Pride Month, the organization will celebrate its 10th anniversary. Today, NAGLREP has grown in size and scope to more than 1,500 members. The benefits are many. A profile on NAGLREP.com, which gives you access to the 75,000 unique visits a month, as it is the leading referrer of LGBT clients. 90% of NAGLREP members tell us that they close 1 to 3 deals a year through their membership. 8% say they close 4 to 6 deals a year, and 2% a whopping 7 to 10 deals a year through their alliance with NAGLREP. And of course, the association provides its members with the capability to showcase leadership and the ability to address LGBT housing issues at the local, state, and national levels. Listeners can join at NAGLREP.com. And Seth, you talked about earlier you came from a mixed race family, so you understand diversity. Why is it important for NAGLREP members to take a leadership role in the community?
Well, it's a huge question. I think that, one, let's talk about the business value of participating in an organization that you care about. So in real estate, as in almost every other business, a lot of business is driven by referrals. And when you create this sort of shared, I'd say, philosophy or the shared sort of position on the world, all of a sudden you have a relationship with the other members of this organization that you don't have with other people outside. And they start to know you as someone who they can trust to take care of clients that they may have in other places. So it's a perfect way to build this referral network. Now, the second part of that is you also create this a group of folks who understand what you might be challenged with that you can learn from. Learn how they run their businesses. There's a transparency that can exist in organizations when you get into a group and you talk about your businesses and the challenges personally and professionally that you can't get just by going on Facebook. Like you can't. Facebook is fantastic and so is Google, but somehow face-to-face in a community environment, you can learn so much more and develop relationships so much deeper. I'm a huge proponent of belonging to organizations and participating. Now, the question that you really asked was, why is it important to, sort of stand up for what you believe in and be a part of an organization? And I think that that's a very personal one. It's like the challenges that we have in the world is always, it's balancing our beliefs with, how we live in the world. And do we always go picket things? Because, here's a perfect example. Uber is a great tool and we can all agree to that. But the founders have shown themselves not to comport so great in the world. There have been lots of allegations about sexism and abuse with some of their drivers and, just foul language, like all kinds of things. So as a human, how do you take a stand on that? And I think that being part of an organization allows you to frame how you might respond in the world in a responsible way and in a way that might get legislation to change, might also change the minds of people around you, voice ideas that maybe you hadn't thought about. So I don't have a pat answer for it, but I do think that one, ignoring it's not going to help. And the opportunity is to have open and honest conversations so you can figure out how to create an impact in the world about the things you care about.
Is it part of your personal brand?
Oh yeah, I think as an individual, everything is part of your personal brand, because from the outside, everything you say, all the information that's consumed about you, every video, every blog post, the way you dress even, and how you comport yourself anywhere in public is, that's open for interpretation. So I think, yes, personal brand is just another word to say it's who you are. You already have a brand. Do you want to take ownership of that brand and be responsible for how it is in the world? That's just old school, right? It's just about, do you want to be a stand-up human being in the world? And is that what you want to be known for? That, to me, is what personal branding is all about.
Well, we're going to learn much more from you at the 4th Annual NAGLREP LGBT Conference. This has just been an incredible treat to listen to one of the country's top marketers share with us some ideas. You can visit Seth on the web at sethprice.net. You can find him also at Placester, and you can meet him in person and get his book at the NAGLREP conference. Seth, we can't thank you enough for spending time with us today and for sharing some of the really great ideas that you have about building a brand. And thank you very much.
My pleasure, David. Thanks so much for having me, and I can't wait to see you. If you don't have a ticket yet for this conference, I know you're going to kick yourself for missing it, because I know for myself personally, I'm preparing to give everything that I know in my speech, but also everyone who's organized this, you're going to have amazing speakers. You're going to have other people that are so committed to this cause and what you live for, that this is an opportunity that you don't want to miss. So I look forward to meeting you in person. Please come up and say hello, shake my hand. I'd love to meet you.
Can't wait to do it, Seth. This has been NAGLREP Success. Until next time, I'm David Throaty.